So hello everyone, welcome to the third episode of Read Baby Read. My name is Kenneth Chang.
My name is Josh Hong.
So today there will be a very special episode because if you are watching this, you'll probably watch it on the 20th of June, which coincidentally is the World Refugee Day. So at the behest of Josh, he suggested doing something related to it, and we thought of reviewing a book that is written by a former refugee, which goes by the name of People Like Us.
Yep, right, exactly. And today is the World Refugee Days, which is a day established to commemorate people who flee their home country or their habitual residence for all kinds of reasons. And today we're going to talk about the story of a former refugee, or some people would say a refugee is always a refugee. So a refugee, well, it depends on, certain people do not like to be associated with the word refugee, but some people, a lot of people increasingly do not mind being called as a refugee throughout their life. So we're going to talk about the life of Hashi Mohamed, and also share with you his inspiring story. Like I say, today is the World Refugee Day. A refugee, according to the 1951 United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees and its 1967 protocol, is a person who, owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion, he or she is outside the country of his or her nationality and is unwilling or unable to return to it. And the convention also outlines the person's rights and the international standards of treatment for his or her protection. So before we go on, I'd just like to throw a question at you, Kenneth. Can you think of a Malaysian who used to be, a so-called a normal citizen in the country, but has become a refugee outside of Malaysia?
Can Alvin Tan be considered as one?
Precisely, yes, a very good answer. Actually, Malaysia over the years has producing a good number of refugees in different countries. Alvin Tan being one of them, the guy who was so much into pornography, and about 10 or 12 years or so, he made a video together with his then girlfriend, wishing our Muslim friends selamat berbuka puasa.
It was a picture.
Oh, picture, yes, right. A picture with a bowl of bak kut teh, and we know this is a highly sensitive
Got him into trouble.
topic to our Muslim community. So he got into trouble, he fled the country. And he is one. Another one would be?
Nur Sajat.
Exactly. And Nur Sajat is actually a man who identifies himself or herself as a woman, and she became sort of like quite prominent on the social media, to the point that our religious authority had to go after her. Eventually she left the country. I think she went to Thailand. From there she sought asylum with UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR in Bangkok. From there she was resettled to Australia. So we do have at least two examples of high-profile refugees over the years, but there are many others who are anonymous, who do not like to be identified because they want to lead a peaceful and quiet life in a new country.
I guess we can speak a little bit about Nur Sajat because I was sort of involved in her resettlement at that time.
Oh, you did? Right.
Yeah,
you didn't
just
tell me about it.
As a monitoring aspect, because I previously worked in a human rights organization called Swaram. Do Google it out if you're interested in prominent human rights organization that try to do the right thing in Malaysia. So life has become quite intolerable for her. She alleged that the police has even sexually arrested her while she was being summoned as a witness. You know, so that setting aside that, with all kinds of cyber attacks and cyber bullying, and even people that genuinely has a good nature in the sense that just tell her to repent, but she felt that she has nothing to repent for because her sexuality is her is what she can control. So life has become shit for her. So she decided to resettle to somewhere else. And I am a follower of her Instagram, so she's clearly living a happier life. Yeah.
And also for Alvin Tan, I think recently he became an American citizen.
Quite proud of it.
He's proud, and proudly showing off his citizenship card or something on social media. These two examples are good cases to prove that you know, even Malaysia is considered, even the fact that Malaysia is considered a relatively stable and prosperous country, but it doesn't mean that a country as such doesn't have issue with you know, political persecution or religious persecution.
Yeah.
And in the case of Nur Saja, is even more interesting and unique in the sense that I think if I were the case officer, I was a case worker adjudicating her application, I probably would most probably I would have recognized her under this what we call convention nexus, membership of a particular social group, because she was born a man, but she identifies herself as woman, which is not acceptable to many people in Malaysia,
And we
particularly
can always say that this
Muslim
is open
community.
secret lah. This
Yeah, yeah.
Malaysia state is especially not kind to
exactly
to
transgender,
yeah.
LGBT communities and all that. So she was most probably qualified at least under membership of particular social group, or she could also be, you know, considered as a refugee under religious persecution, yeah, because she doesn't adhere to the state-sanctioned ideology of Islam, so to say. Right? Okay, that is enough for our introduction to this episode. Okay, Hashi Mohamed.
So yeah, first of all, we just want to give a context to a bit of context, a bit of background to the author himself before we dive deep into what he has to say in the book lah. So people are like us, Hashi Mohamed. So Hashi is a Somalian born in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a bit interesting, right? It's because he was a Somalian, but he was born in Nairobi, Kenya. We can talk more about that later if we can delve into that. He lived in a rundown part of Nairobi with his 4 siblings, his mother and his traveling salesman father. So the turning point of his life happened when his father passed away in 1993.
Yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, his father is a sole breadwinner. So since his father passed away already, there's no hope for the family to essentially make ends meet or even survive in Kenya, especially they are Somalian. As we all know, Somalia and Kenya has a border conflict, and it's still spewing until now, right? Yeah. So they made a hard decision. So Hashi made that hard decision along with his family. So Hashi arrived first, if I'm not mistaken. Hashi was 9 years old at that time, and he was sent to UK as a refugee. So, but what is more interesting is that he doesn't let this background hold him back. So he eventually managed to get a place at the University of Hertfordshire, if I'm not mistaken. It's quite near to London, right?
Yep.
Hertfordshire,
yes.
To study law and French. From there, he was awarded a postgraduate scholarship to be in Oxford, basically the single most famous and best university in the whole of UK. In fact, one of the best in the world. Become a successful barrister and also an accomplished public speaker and a broadcaster. So fascinating background.
Okay, correct. Thanks for summing up Hashi Mohamed's background. And just for our listeners, our audience who are not familiar with Somalia, Somalia is officially known as the Federal Republic of Somalia. It is a country in the Horn of Africa, next to Tanzania and Kenya, on the northeastern part of African continent, known for its long coastline on the Indian Ocean. The majority of the population is ethnic Somali, but divided into different clans, and the country is predominantly Muslim, with Sunni Islam being the dominant branch. And like I say, Somalia is a heavily clan-based society, and with Dir, Hawiye, Darod, Rahabin, and Iza, and all the so-called dominant clans playing a significant and important role in social, political, and economic aspects of life. And therefore, if you happen to belong to what we call a minority tribe or clan in Somalia, the chances of you facing persecution will be higher than others. And again, Somalia is also interesting in the sense that it is actually divided in different parts, administrative divisions. And one particular division called Somaliland has actually self-declared independence, but it has not been recognized by the international community. So-called, when we say the international community, we need to qualify by saying like probably United Nations, right? And also Puntland also enjoys a certain degree of autonomy. So this is about the current situation of the political structure of Somalia. And Somalia descended into a civil war in about 1989, 1990, if I'm not mistaken. So it is actually a war-torn country, poverty-stricken, and Hashim Mohamed happened to be one of those citizens of Somalia who had to flee the country because of all these, tragedies that are still ongoing in his home country.
And it's also the fact that his father wouldn't be there to protect him because his father passed away
in a car accident.
In a car accident, and so he made that fateful decision to migrate to United Kingdom.
Yep. And also one important thing is it is quite common to see Somali people speaking decent level of English. This is because many of them have fled the country and been residing in Kenya. Kenya has a significant population of citizens of Somali origins.
And they are economically more prosperous.
Exactly,
right?
yeah, because they are industrious and because they're immigrants, and of course, like as immigrants, especially the first generation immigrants, usually have to work hard and have to basically carve out a livelihood for themselves. And Hashim Mohamed's father happened to be one of those who were working very hard to support the family, but unfortunately the father died in a car crash or something. And then Hashim Mohamed's mother at the time decided to send him and his siblings over to the UK by flight, together with some other siblings. So he went to the UK when he was about 9 years old.
Staying at his relative's place.
That's right, yes.
His
like
mother
I say,
only came later.
That's right. Yeah. Like I say, Somalia is a very clan-based society. It is therefore quite common for a Somali person to go to another Somali person saying like, you and I are related in some way, we happen to be a same clan, and then your uncle is my uncle or something, simply purely based on the kind of family network or the kind of relations, and then the person usually wouldn't say no to helping another Somali. So it's quite common within the Somali community. So that's why the mother,
there's the Ummah
exactly,
bondage.
and also the Ummah, the idea of Muslims belonging to a same community, helping out, and this is particularly strong within the Somali community. This is how Hashish and his siblings were helped by these relatives that the mother entrusted them into. Right. And also, okay, let's talk about the book. Okay, my impression of the book, again, we always begin with our impression of the book that we review for that particular episode. For me, what really strikes me is the fact that this book is not just about Hashim Mohamed's personal stories and experiences. He also expands the topic to include other areas of challenges within British society, meritocracy, class system, and the hurdles that the underprivileged communities in the UK are facing, the unequal access to resources, social capital, and the rest of it.
Because there's the byline to it is that the official title of the book is People Like Us and What It Takes to Make It in Modern Britain. So for readers, if you are not interested with Hashi's life but interested in how modern Britain works, they also Hashi also wrote about it and perhaps provide a glimpse about how was it from an outsider.
True. I have to say this is very uplifting and inspiring book. You will be able to see how a poor boy from a war-torn, poverty-stricken Somalia fought so hard to make it in the UK today. And we all know that the UK is a very much class-based society. Whether you become a successful barrister, whether you become a prominent judge, very much depends on the education that you received.
Or who your parents are.
Who your parents are, the social capital, your networks of friends, and all these things. And being a refugee boy, Hashim Mohamed had nothing as such, absolutely nothing of the sort. you know, basically he had no head start as compared to other, but he really worked very hard, and he definitely is a very resourceful person, and he did eventually make it, becoming the only, as of now, if I'm not mistaken, still the only barrister of Somali origin in the UK. But what really moves me, what really inspires me, is the fact that he actually, other than sharing his own experiences as a successful refugee who made it, he also offer a reflection on contemporary British society, and especially the class culture that is so entrenched in the UK today, as well as the hurdles for the underprivileged communities to move up the social ladder. So it gives the reader a wider perspective beyond his personal story, to also question the way that the either British society or Malaysian society operates, and to confront the unequal access to social capital and resources. So it is a book worth reading, not just because his story is inspiring, you know, it's a poor boy becoming a successful barrister, becoming prominent. It is so uplifting, and I would like to, you know, just I would like my children to be just like him and all that. Other than that, it also offers, you know, like you say, a glimpse into how British society operates and how these challenges and hurdles could be overcome.
So about my first impression of the book is that I agree with all of the things that Josh said, but I try to analyze the book from a different point. So yeah, of course it's uplifting, of course it's inspiring and all this, but beyond that, I find it more fascinating about this book is that it's clear that Hashi tried to make use of some of the inherent British caste system. Like he tried to speak like a white man.
Class system.
Rather
than caste system.
Class system,
Okay.
So he tried to speak like a white man,
Yeah.
which he's not afraid to admit it. That's why I use that word white man. He also talked about confidence.
Yeah.
He also talked about trying to attain social capital and cultural capital. What broadly means is that social capital is about how the people that you know. So he talked about his role, his industry in the law. So barrister is basically, it will be very high chances that you would not have a successful career in the law industry, particularly in UK, if you don't know the right person.
True.
So he tried his best. He do all sorts of ways. He read the book and you'll find out that he'll send out weird emails to people who are connected to the law industry, try to get in touch with him in order to gain that. So then the second thing about cultural capital. So cultural capital is about how you act, how you answer your questions during the interview, and how you basically behave. Basically, because it's incredibly unfortunate that UK is still largely governed by a class system, and a lot of times how much that you earn, what kind of stature you are in UK is basically governed by how you speak, how you act, in fact how you dress yourself, you know. So in fact how you eat also in some ways. Maybe Josh can elaborate on that. He learned all those things, he take in all those things, and we find a lot of examples that where people, refugees actually, who made it into the society that they eventually resettle, to say that I did all this through hard work. I did all this through my own grit, you know. I grinded, you know. I did the hard graft, you know. He admit partly that he's hardworking, he's industrious, but he also said that it's all down to luck. It's all down to the people that he met. He was lucky that there's a few people that look beyond his skins, that doesn't care about his religion, that doesn't care about how he looks like, and give a chance to him and took a chance upon him. And he was able to succeed. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times when we talk about, especially in modern society where income inequality is getting more and more skewed, a lot of times we are being trained or we are being educated in a way that saying that things will be better if you work harder, or if you grind yourself out of poverty, but that's not necessarily the case. And Hashi Mohamed go at lengths to emphasize that a lot of his success is down to pure luck. That is what I find it most fascinating, and the humility that he is able to showcase, because we met a lot of people, successful people, not just refugees, entrepreneurs who is shy or who is sometimes try to avoid that his personal background, say that he used a very good example about Donald Trump. He said that Donald Trump never talked about that 1 million investment, 1 million small fortune that his dad invests on his company. And he talked about Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos' dad actually invested in Amazon initially during the starting years for amount of 250 US dollars. So these are the things that successful entrepreneurs or successful people in this in the world would try to hide but in contrast, they will try to highlight their personal craftsmanship, their personal grit, all these things. I'm proud of Hashi for able to admit all this,
Yeah, just for, I mean, like you say, like Donald Trump, he actually had a head start in the sense that the father already invested so much money in his education and all that. Born with a silver spoon. And compared to Hashi Mohamed, who had basically had to work everything up from scratch. That's why I say when just take for example, if you see a successful PhD student, someone who graduates with a PhD degree, and if the person already had a head start in the sense that the father happened to be or the mother happened to be a billionaire or a millionaire, then of course his or her success to me wouldn't be surprising. But someone like Hashi Mohamed, who actually made it to become the first barrister of Somali origin.
Does not forget about his roots.
Yes,
that's what we
exactly. As a refugee, a very poor boy, not knowing much about the English language and British culture and all that, and he eventually made it. Of course, we have to be careful here not to just highlight the story of a good immigrant. We know that there are many other immigrants or refugees who do not have the kind of resources or the kind of opportunities that Hashi Mohamed had been given. So we have to acknowledge that there are a lot of immigrants and refugees who work equally hard, but who may not have the right opportunity to actually move up as Hashi Mohamed. And their stories are equally worth telling, worth learning, and worth knowing about. So I just like to qualify my statement earlier. And coming back to Hashi Mohamed, I think other than pure luck, he also, I think what really contributed to his rising up the social ladder was also because he was confident and brave enough to explore other opportunities.
To look for solutions.
To look for solutions. To complement the reading of this book, I highly recommend a podcast by BBC4, which Hashi Mohamed did about 10 years ago, 2017 or something, entitled Adventures in Social Mobility. Go and listen to the podcast by all means, and you will better understand the contents of the book. I think the podcast and this book go together, go hand in hand very well, and then we will be able to understand a lot more about how Hashi Mohamed came about as a person. And in that particular podcast, he talked about his first application for a job placement with BBC Newsnight, which is one of my favorite programs, and I really enjoy BBC Newsnight because there is a lot of in-depth analysis of political, international, economic issues in that particular program. And he liked the program very much, and he was looking for a job placement. And then he took the courage to write to the editor at the time, editor of BBC Newsnight. On one particular line in his email that I think really did the trick, which goes like this: I swapped MTV for BBC Newsnight a couple of years ago, and I have never looked back. I think that particular line really, struck the editor who received the email. Wow, this is really
and the editors
a young
saw
man,
the potential
exactly,
in him.
and who was basically desperate for a different kind of opportunities. So he decided to give this opportunity to him. So that's how he ended up at the beginning working with BBC Newsnight. So I think that is very inspiring. The reason why he had acquired the kind of confidence, being a refugee boy, having the confidence to actually approach BBC Newsnight is amazing. And what actually contributed his confidence was his experience of going back to Somalia when he was 19 years old. Before that, he had no interest in study. Yeah, he wasn't so much interested in study and all that. He just felt that, I probably would end up a refugee my entire life in the UK. I have no future. This country is miserable and all that. But that particular trip back to Somalia changed his mind and changed his perspective, because he saw how poor, how futureless the country was like, and I think he came to the senses that the UK would be the only place that I would like to spend the rest of my life in. So he came back, deciding to work a lot harder, and then he started to build his own confidence. He decided to seize whatever opportunities that was at hand, including the opportunity to work with BBC News now.
Yeah, so Hashi also, I wanted to talk about this plight of a refugee also. This is one single incident which is captured in the book, which changed his life a lot. Also back to also the second incident about his traveling back to Nairobi, Kenya. So when he was first starting school that time, there's this lovely teacher trying to encourage the class to save money. So for every day that they come to class, if they have a piggy bank. So if you manage to put into the piggy bank every day £1 or £2 each, then you'll be able to go to France in the year end. So he tried he do it diligently. In fact, he said that he is the one that very disciplined, tried to every time he will contribute to the piggy bank. So until summer came, he couldn't go because he's a refugee. And he does not have passport. And at that time, he does not have the concept or idea of what a passport is. So at that time, when of course I'm paraphrasing it because I read this chapter like last week. So basically, it's in a class. So the teacher was basically in tears and broke that news to him. That incident was was very hard on him, and it makes him it convinced him that he needs to do everything by himself, and success or eventually happiness or stability in life, right, wouldn't just drop down from heaven. You need to work for it. So after he finally became a citizen of UK, he had the passport. He had a passport. The first place that he wanted to travel is go back to Nairobi. So so he went back to Nairobi, as you have said, that he saw the poverty and what has engulfed his home country, his home city. But he saw another thing that's very striking to me also. So his uncle, so basically his father's brother, made it in Kenya. So his father and his brother is very entrepreneurial. So they probably do a business and prosper about IT or something, selling used computers or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. And he saw his cousins for the first time, and his cousins was able to speak 3 or 2 languages, and they were very clever because whatever you say about although his cousin is a refugee, the brother, basically his uncle and his family did do well in Kenya. So that chapter also changed his life in the sense that he saw that what am I doing with my life when my cousin, all of them are speaking 3 languages, are industrious, are doing well in Kenya. I cannot just let this life of me in UK, especially I'm a UK citizen now, goes to waste. That's where he was further inspired. And that particular chapter was again also captured in the book, which I find quite inspiring. So basically it's his eureka moment. So I just wanted to point this out, is that we wanted to paint of course, we say a lot of good things about Hashi, and he rightly deserves all of that, but it's not a smooth sailing journey. There's a lot of ups and downs. There was this one particular chapter I want to mention also, is that when his mother came after a few years, his mother only spoke Somali language, and he, in a desperate attempt to adapt to the UK society, he basically given up on the Somali language, and at that time his only language is English. So basically he and his mother have to try to reconnect each other again when his mother is speaking Somali and he can only speak in English. So there's a lot of trials and tribulations.
Yeah, but actually, to be fair to Hashi, I think he didn't entirely, abandon his Somali background.
Yes, of course.
The reason why he started to learn English so earnestly, so intensely, was because he saw his future in the UK.
Of course.
He was wanting to put down his roots in the country. And that's why he put in a lot of effort to make sure that his English would be as perfect as a native speaker, and he would use
like an Eton boy.
Exactly, he would speak with the right accents and all that. In the podcast that I mentioned earlier, he actually enjoys playing the accents game. For example, like when he is with his Somali family members, they will switch back to Somali accent, speaking English with Somali accents. But the next day, because he's a barrister, so he says like, the next day you will find me in the court speaking to the judge. My lord, my learned friend may have been mistaken or absolutely mistaken or something, very posh English accent will come out, because that is the circumstance that calls for the so-called the right accent to be applied for that particular occasion. So that's why I'm saying like refugees and immigrants, they are resourceful and creative in the sense that they can easily adapt to a different circumstance depending on what is required of them, including accents. So he is very good at playing the accents game, accents game in that sense. But it doesn't mean that he has actually. I think he proudly embraces the fact that he is a Somali refugee and who made it in the UK. But again, I have to say that we probably very much emphasize on the success stories of refugees. I really have to reiterate this statement of mine that I have made on many occasions. It doesn't matter what kind of person that the refugee or asylum seeker aspires to. If you're happy to, you're happy with just being, a script writer, you're just happy being a musician, you're just happy with who you are, as long as you do not harm society, you do not do harm to society, as long as you do not burden other people, I'm happy with whatever you do.
You should afford the protection under the law, which everyone deserves.
This really brings out a question that a lot of people have in their mind. Why certain refugees in Malaysia or other countries are doing better than the locals. And I also notice it is very common to see Malaysians having this kind of mentality, in the sense that refugees should not be doing better than I am. Because I am the citizen of this country, I belong here, they don't. They only came later. And then, like in the case of Malaysia, they are not even recognized as refugees because Malaysia is not a signatory to the 1951 Convention. Malaysia has no legal framework to deal with refugee applications and all that. And so these people, in the eyes of many Malaysians, basically are just illegal migrants. So how dare that an migrant in Malaysia is earning more money than I do, than I am, is doing better than I am? I simply cannot accept that. I have heard it time and time again from Malaysians. I know that this understanding, this misconception is also very common in British society, but I like to emphasize that as long as the person earns the money through legal means without harming others,
it's the fruits of their labor.
As it is a fruit of their labor, we have to recognize that. Who are we to be jealous of their success or to be jealous of the wealth that they accumulated through proper means, right?
And through Hashi own words,
exactly.
A lot of times success are down to luck.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if you're a citizen of Malaysia and some refugee in Cambodia or someone made it more successful than you, earn a higher level income of you. It's all down to luck. Of course, there's some part is great, there's some parts in industry, and it's also about the interest of you are. I can never be earning more than, let's say, I did economics and my interest lies in politics, human rights, working in NGO. I can never earn more than an engineer that aspire to work in Sapura Kencana or in Petronas, you can try to be successful within your circle, which hopes which you can become the top 10 or the top 5 or the most famous person or the person to go to when it comes to politics and human rights. You may in that way become more successful, but you have to be aware of your industry also. So let's say if your life is all about making ends meet, all about having a material enjoyment, then probably you should opt for a career that is more financially rewarding, but again, we are humans, we work beyond that,
The point that I'm trying to drive is that as long as the person works hard, it doesn't matter the person is a Malaysian or non-Malaysian. The person deserves the wealth and the success that he or she enjoys at this moment. Because it is a hard-earned money. How many of us in Malaysia are willing to put through the hardships of working hours after hours, up to 12, 13, 14 hours?
I thought of a good example.
Just to accumulate the money to make sure that his or her family would have a decent life in Malaysia. Many of the refugees, many of the migrant workers are willing to sacrifice enjoyment, personal comfort, just to make sure that their families are well taken care of, because they know that they have nothing else other than this job. So they have to work hard for it. So that's why that's why I've been saying, like, who are we to question, the hard-earned money? Why should we be jealous of the success, the seeming success that they
in
have
fact,
today?
it should be an inspiration and encouragement for you to work better, because me and Josh, we had a lot of refugee friends, and most of them are very industrious. They could pick up a language instantly, and they could do the manual labor job much more efficiently, much more longer than I believe. Maybe not you, but me. Definitely me. We always make this good example. Just look beyond refugees.
Many of our refugee friends,
Grab drivers who are mostly Malay. I'm sure that they are definitely 10 times more hardworking than us, and yet they are earning peanut wages. But this is a this is an economic system that we criticize. But yet at the same time, we cannot always use this as a barometer. Just basically, I'm in an aircon room as opposed to you, or just because I'm born in where you born is basically a lottery. Nobody chooses to be born in Sudan, in Gaza, or in Hashi case in Kenya. We were lucky enough to be born in Malaysia, which is still democratically stable in that sense.
For now.
I'm
not sure.
We make
I'm
use
not
of
sure
it.
for how much longer.
We make use of it, just like the refugees were dealt with the harsh blow of life, of this game called life, and they came to Malaysia or whatever country they choose to resettle with their family or alone, and they just do what they possibly can to survive, and there's no judgment here. There should be no judgment.
I remember some years ago, a friend of mine asked me about refugees and all that, so I explained things to them, like in Malaysia, the fact that the country doesn't recognize refugees actually makes life miserable for them, because they're afraid of law enforcement agencies like immigration, police, and all that. A refugee friend of mine used to tell me, I always have 50 ringgit in my pocket just in case I bump into law enforcement officers. And as you know, bribery and all that is very common in Malaysia. At least I have 50 ringgit to deal with the situation. By saying dealing with the situation, meaning money could actually money could actually get you out of trouble. Settle, right? Okay. So it's and then I said, not many of us are willing. Actually, not many of us have encountered difficult situation as such. And in my case, is I very much, I do not like to use the word empathies, but I do have a lot of empathies with refugees or immigrants or migrant workers in this country, is because, at the risk of sounding patronizing, is because I used to be a migrant worker in the UK. I was a poor student. My family actually didn't send me money. I didn't want to burden my parents. I decided that I would work and support, myself throughout my education in London. So I took up different kinds of job. There was one occasion when I was working at 7-Eleven. There is no longer 7-Eleven convenience store in the UK, but back in the 90s, there were quite a number of them. So I worked in one of the 7-Eleven outlets in London, and there was this white colleague who was, for some reason that he didn't quite like, foreign students working at 7-Eleven, because we being poor students were willing to work long hours and also night shifts, like from 11 to 7 o'clock in the morning. A lot of white workers actually were not willing to to do night shifts, and I was willing to do. So this white colleague one day just said to me, because of you guys, and I'm not getting paid
That's terrible, huh?
sufficient enough for me to support my life. And so I had to tell him like, wow, there are night shifts available. Are you willing to do it? I have not seen your name. You never put your name forward. Whenever the manager asked for night shifts, it is always, us, the foreign students, who raise our hands. What about you guys? And he just went quiet.
It's always strange that we talk about if you work. So basically, I again, we don't buy the social mobility thing that Hashi said about. Like, if you work harder, you earn more. Is that? But if you are a true ideologue of that belief, right? Since refugees in this case, right, works harder than you, then they should pay more.
Exactly.
And I find it very double standard. Is that this belief doesn't subscribe to someone who happens to not be a citizen anymore. And it's just, if you're a true ideologue, you're a true believer of like social mobility, meritocracy and things like that, since you work harder, you earn more, then in this case, the refugee earn harder.
Exactly.
Work more.
That's right.
And they should be earning more. So, is there anything you want to add for the first part?
No, I think we need to talk about when I think what is even more valuable is the discussion on social mobility, challenging the status quo of British society, the class system, the privileged backgrounds. People with privileged backgrounds usually move up faster, a lot faster, and also earn a lot more than others. For example, he gave certain statistics in the book. Although only 1% of the population is educated at Oxbridge, 78%, 78% of the bar attended either Oxford or Cambridge, right? Only 1% of the UK population went to Oxford or Cambridge. However, 78% of barristers came from these two universities. What does that tell you?
It's
unequal access.
Class-based.
Exactly, right. And also 71%, 71% of military officers went to public schools in the UK. When we say public school in the context of Britain, it means private school, not state school. State schools are state school. Public schools are private school, independent schools, right? Fee-paying independent schools, meaning that your parents have to fork out like 40, 50, 60,000 pounds a year to send you to either primary or secondary school to make sure that you'll be able to make it to Cambridge or Oxford or some other, prestigious universities in the UK. 51% of journalists did that. And until July 2024, 49% of the members of parliament were privately educated until July 2024. And it has gone down to 23% now, thanks to the sheer number of Labour members of parliament. 63% in Parliament, House of Commons, from state school background, elected in the general election last year. So, despite the fact that we are increasingly uncomfortable with Keir Starmer and his rhetoric, we have to give him credit for bringing in so many members of Parliament in the House of Commons with state school backgrounds.
That's true.
And Hashi Mohamed would be very pleased to see this development, because he himself didn't go to Cambridge or Oxford for his undergraduate. He went to Hertfordshire University, which is an average university. I wouldn't say bad or good university.
It's not even in the Russell Group, right?
Exactly. No, it's not in the Russell Group for sure. And then, but for his master degree, he received a scholarship. Apparently, he did well enough to, to deserve a scholarship to go to Oxford to do his master degree. And later on, he sat for the bar exam and all that, and then he approached a barrister, a female barrister, who was very interested in the way that he fought so hard to come this far and willing to give him the opportunity, and then he ended up becoming a barrister, right?
I just wanted to end the first part with just saying that, as Josh has rightly mentioned, all of the things that has experienced by Hashi Mohamed is that he is a successful example of social mobility because he is able to climb up the ladder and climb up to the pole of I would say the top class of UK society, but yet at the same time he is not a defender of social mobility. So as for the reason that we have talked about it, because he went on and mentioned all these statistics, because social mobility proponents of social mobility would have you believe that it doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you are born, it doesn't matter your accent are, it doesn't matter how
Yes.
poor your parents are, so long you are willing to work hard,
True.
you are able to make it. But
Yeah.
credit to Hashi, and this is what I find it most impressive about him, is that
Yeah.
he didn't forget his
True.
roots, and he was never a defender of social
Exactly.
mobility. Of course, if you are born from a lower social economic background, you aspire to climb through
Yeah.
the ladder. We all would not stop you, and we all would encourage you. And I'm sure reading Hashi book will probably give you some advice on how to attain that. But that's not to say that social mobility is successful.
One last thing I like to say about this book is because you can clearly feel the love that Hashi Mohamed has for his mother. His mother never went to school. His mother really worked hard to make sure that the children were well taken care of. That's why the mother decided to send the siblings to the UK for a better future after the husband died in a tragic car crash.
1993.
I can relate to this part of his story in some sense, because when he talks about relative social mobility, he talks about the opportunity given to raise the person to a different level in life. My mother never went to school, and my mother was practically illiterate, but she was able to write her own name, and practically that was about it. But my mother always made sure that all the children received decent education, and she insisted that I would go to university by all means. So that's why I went to the UK. She wanted to support me financially. I said, like, Mom, you have been working hard enough. I don't want you to suffer any further. I don't want to burden you any further. I would rather take care of myself. And in the UK,
that resonates with you.
Exactly. And then I have to say that it was because of my brother, my eldest brother, and my sister-in-law, who happened to be in the UK at the time. They were willing to host me. They took me over
something like Hashi.
They brought me over to the UK, and then my mother actually wanted to support me, but I said it's okay, I would take care of myself. So throughout my years in the UK, I really worked very hard. The reason why I worked hard was because I didn't want to disappoint my mother. And of course, I didn't become a barrister. Although I did study law for a couple of years, but eventually I dropped because I wasn't interested in it. But I still become a different, another person that I never imagined I would have become. I do have a decent life today. I do enjoy my life, and I'm very happy with what I'm doing now. But I think I am who I am today, all thanks to my mother, who actually understood that education would make a huge difference in someone's life, including her own children, including me. And so this is the part of story that I very much relate to Hashi Mohamed. I say, like, thank you, Hashi Mohamed, for putting my gratitude to my mother so well in the book. Right.
As Hashi said, you wrote your story in your own way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Right.
That's a
That's
long
the
first
end
part.
of the first part of this episode. It
We'll
has
come back
been a
later.
long part. Yeah. Right.
Hello, welcome back to the second part. We apologize again for being a bit lengthy on the first
Yes,
part, but
okay,
it
we
was
do.
a fruitful discussion.
Yeah.
So for the second part, we just wanted to, for the first part of the second part, we just want to mention some of the examples highlight the examples of the refugees during this special episode for the World Refugee Day. So I believe Josh has the story of some refugees that you can tell.
Yes. Oh, definitely, because as you know, I worked with the refugee agencies for off and on about 13 years. So over the years, I met so many asylum seekers and refugees, and many of their stories are really an inspiration for me. Yeah, because the way that they work so hard to to make it in the country of resettlement, country of asylum, and all that, really puts me to shame, because everybody has the potential to be successful, but not everybody would like to put in that kind of effort. But I have seen so many of them willing to take the difficult path. So that's why, I have a lot of respect for refugees, migrant workers, asylum seekers purely because of that, because they do not really have the resources that many of us do have, and especially those coming from privileged background. I don't think they really should boast so much about their own successes. Because a lot of people who are in hardship, who really have gone through all kinds of difficulties, I think they and who eventually made it should be the one that we look up to. Okay, but anyways, this particular story of mine is about a refugee boy, a Somali refugee boy. In fact, he was the very first Somali person that I met in my life. Way back in 1995, I think the autumn of 1995. I can't quite remember October or November, but I am pretty sure it was in the autumn of 1995. And I thought of him because of a documentary on Mo Farah that I happened to come across a couple of years ago. Mo Farah is one of the top runners in the world, who has won, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4 Olympic titles.
Gold medalist.
Gold medalist,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, for the United Kingdom, and also a few others, world titles as well. Definitely well recognized as one of the best runners in the world.
Being knighted as a sir.
Yes, that's
Yep.
right. Yes. And Mo Farah came out. When I say came out, it doesn't mean that he came out as gay. He came out to his supporters about his own real identity, because he was a refugee boy when he went to the UK, I think at the age of 11. And he was actually brought over to the UK by a woman, a Somali woman, for no reasons. He was forcibly separated from his own mother, ended up in the UK. Later on, he assumed the identity of another person, and then he started to live a so-called a normal life.
That's why he has 2 different names, right? If I'm
Yes,
not
that's
mistaken.
right. And only years later that he realized that he had been using someone's identity, and he had always felt uncomfortable about it. I think he probably also had a very strong sense of guilt. That's why after he became like so successful, well-known athletes and all that, a lot of people will come up to, thanks for contributing for gold medals to great, what is that, GB team GB, sorry,
Team
GB in Olympics
Not
and all
Gordon
that.
Brown, it's Great Britain.
Yeah, that's right. Right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and then he started to feel, this guilt, this guilty conscience was becoming very intense to the point that he decided to tell all. So he did a documentary with the BBC, and he told the world that I'm not Mo Farah. My real name is like something else,
Quite
like
a
Khalid
revelation.
Abdul. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. It was quite a revelation, and his story, of course, no doubt, again very uplifting. A success story, good immigrant story, and all that. But it really brought me back to my very first job as legal assistant at a law firm in the UK, in London, way back in 1995. And one day my boss just asked me to accompany a Somali boy who was, I think, 16 or 17 at the time, to the Home Office for interview, what we call refugee status
Yeah,
determination.
for context, back
interview.
then Josh is working in United Kingdom.
Yes,
Yep.
that's right.
Yep.
I was actually studying and working.
Oh, studying and working,
at the same time, because, like I said in the in the earlier part, I was working very hard to support myself. So there was this job that came to me as a legal assistant at this particular law firm, so I took it up. So my boss asked me to accompany this boy to the Home Office for interview. I decided, yes, I very interesting story. I decided to go with the applicant. And then, throughout the interview, I could see how unprofessional and nasty the Home Office officer was, questioning, my client at the time on a lot of issues, and using inappropriate language. Just like, how do you expect me to believe you, if you don't even speak decent English and this and that? This is really highly unprofessional in the process of refugee determination, because despite the fact that they are asylum seekers or they are refugees and all that, we need to treat them with dignity and respect.
And it's not like Yeah, of course, there is an
Yeah.
argument saying that the home minister, home ministry officials, right? We are not asking you to be kind to them,
As
but
a
at least maintain your
Professional.
professionalism.
Yes, that's
you know?
right. Yes,
Yeah.
and never.
And impartiality. Yeah.
That's right, impartiality, and also never get too personal, never get personal with the applicant. So I saw with my own eyes how this boy really suffered through the interview, but he was very determined to make sure that he would actually get through the interview and get the refugee status for himself. So after the interview, I accompanied him back to Victoria Station because the interview took place at Croydon, the Home Office building in Croydon, Luna House, if I'm not mistaken, if it is still known as Luna House. And during the journey, he told me about, you know, the what is that, the heater in his room. The room provided by the Home Office wasn't like warm enough. So then I decided to meet him the next day, and then I would give him a few pieces of warm clothes and also a blanket, and he was very thankful to me. I think I could see tears in his eyes. What particularly moved me was his story about, you know, his separation from his mother. Very similar to Mo Farah, or very similar to Hashi Mohammed's. You know, his mother decided to send him to the UK because of the poverty, because the father went missing and all that. What was different was he actually didn't go to the UK by flight, because Hashi Mohamed and Mo Farah went to the UK by flight. The mother or the woman was able to afford a plane ticket to send you know, Hashi or Mo Farah to the UK. This boy Shemaki, his name was Shemaki, told me he had to hide in the cargo. And then he had no idea. Yes, go by the ship. He had no idea where he was heading, and by the time, you know, the worker opened the you know, the doors of the cargo, he realized that he was in a different country.
So it was complete accidental. He ended up in UK.
Yeah, that's right. And then and then he told me his name wasn't actually Shimaki, Himarki. That actually sounds more like a Japanese name. His real name was actually Shemak, Hermarke, which actually means blessings in Somali language. I learned it years later when a Somali colleague of mine in Bangkok told me, you know, the story that you told me, the name Shimaki wasn't actually spelled as Shimaki. It should have been spelled as Shemaka, which means blessings. Okay. Only then I thought probably the Home Office made a mistake, whatever. Yeah, his story was very much similar to Hashi Mohamed and Mo Farah. You know, people like this, you know, they had to make up a story. They have to make up a story. They have to pretend to be someone else in order to secure the refugee status, because they were desperate for a new life in the UK. So I remembered how the boy defended himself throughout the interview. He had to answer all these difficult questions, and, you know, like I say, the Home Office officer in the beginning didn't quite believe him because his English wasn't as posh as an English, you know, upper middle class English person would sound like.
Barely able to survive.
But later on, and then you know, I still remember the Home Office officer turned around by asking, like, you do speak pretty good English. How did you learn it? How would I not think that you probably purposely acquire English skills in order to, you know, pass this interview?
It sounds strange, right?
Exactly.
Like people are trying to leave their home country.
That's right. Yeah.
Just to learn a language to adapt to another country. So
so it's like, you know, and then the boy Shemaka was very, you know, he was very smart, and then he said, like, you know, I went to Nairobi and live in East League, which is a neighborhood in Nairobi, populated by Somali refugees. You know, basically it is a Somali community, and because Kenya is an English-speaking African country, so I learned English through, you know, MTVs or TV programs that I watched, through speaking to others, Kenyan nationals and all that. This is how I acquire my English skills. And still, I could see the, you know, the eyes of the Home Office officer being very skeptical. Very skeptical. Whatever it is, I think we have to understand that many people do not have the kind of privileged background that many of us have. You know, like even myself, like I said in the earlier part of the story, although I had to work and I had to support myself and all that, but I had a very loving family. My parents were very caring. My mom, my late father at least cared about me. You know, it's like, you know, they made sure that the children were well taken care of, and Malaysia is overall is a stable, prosperous country. We cannot say the same of Somalia, right?
These are the elements
so it's like
luck
what I really
talk
so it's like, you know, on the journey back to London, I kept thinking like, why can't the Home Office officer be more sympathetic?
Yep.
Right, more sympathetic. So it's like, and actually, when we talk about empathy or sympathy, and this quality can also be missing among people, successful businessmen or politicians who themselves were once refugees or migrants. I'm sure you have some stories to tell, some examples to share.
So before this, we talk about, we each name one refugee story to tell.
Yeah.
So I ended up, so I'll be the bad guy for this. So I first came across Mr. Nadim Sahawi back then during the end days of Boris Johnson, right? Dying days of Boris Johnson.
Right.
So
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yeah. So for listeners' context, so Boris Johnson was hugely unpopular. In 2021.
He was at the beginning, but he was becoming
until the dying days of,
unpopular.
Of his premiership, he was very unpopular. So basically, long story short, there was a challenge, a vote of no confidence towards him by first Rishi Sunak. His Chancellor of Exchequer resigned. So his replacement was this individual named Nadim Sahawi. So I have to be honest, for a follower of British politics, I never heard about him. So I did a little Google search about him, and I found out he was a refugee before this, but because he came from Iraq back then, and his father, in fact, his grandfather was a minister, a successful minister. Then after that, obviously inherited a fortune. His parents was a successful businessman, and because Saddam Hussein took over power, and he is
in the early 1970s or something.
He is of Kurdish, and Saddam Hussein is especially
brutal
against Kurdish because of political control.
Exactly.
So they left Baghdad and came to UK as refugees. So basically, he has a very different story of refugee. But I just want to put this clear, is that regardless of your wealth and your status, as long as you are fleeing of a country from your home country that you felt that you have a life threat, and you felt that your family or you has a existential threat, then you should be treated normally and to be treated equally as much as Sir Mofara and even Hashi Mohamed. So, but the experience of being a refugee drove Hashi and Mo Farah, may I say, to the left, but that experience of being a refugee in UK, as for Nadim Sahawi, drove him to the right. So he became a citizen. He gained citizenship shortly after. In fact, he was successful in terms. He was Youth Gulf chairman. He was founder of Youth Gulf, and he became a Conservative Party chairman. And I have to give a huge political credit for such accomplishment. In fact, it is not far lesser than whatever Hashi has achieved. But unfortunately, he is off the Brexit side. He became, I don't know whether since when he developed this political ideology, that he stoked up the fear of immigrants, and he is on the right side of politics, which me and Josh find it as at most times disagreeable. And he just became someone that is anti-immigration.
There's this very interesting phenomenon that I think, which is also worth analyzing. Like you say, Nadim Zahawi, being a former refugee himself, is very much against so-called, the Rwanda, the people crossing the English Channel to seek asylum in the UK. Very interestingly, recently, I just watched a debate on whether or not high immigration would be good for Britain, chaired by Sarah Montague. Sarah Montague is a prominent BBC4 presenter. On the panel were Nadim Zahawi, but also this very right-wing academic that both of us are not a fan of, Matthew Goodwin. Yes. So they, of course, like naturally, they are both on the same side. So at one point, because Nadim Zahawi keeps arguing for quality immigrants, good
legal
immigrants,
migration.
legal migration and all that. And to the point that I could clearly tell, listening to the program, I could clearly tell that Montague was becoming very impatient, and then she starts asking, did your family come to the UK by flight? Basically, she is implying that because you are well-to-do, your family is well-to-do, so that's why you were able to fly over to the UK from Iraq by flight. But there are a lot of unfortunate refugees or asylum seekers who were not able to go through this means, and then they had to go by boat. They had to come to the UK by boat illegally, putting their lives at risk and all that, right? So it's like, you guess what Nadim Zahawi, how he answers? He said like, let's not turn this into a personal issue. So he is he admits it, and then he's avoiding the question.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And aside from this implication, this basically Montague was trying to ask basically his status, right? Is Nadim Zahawi and his family benefited from a more lax immigration policy?
Liberal, a very liberal, a very humanitarian asylum policy.
Right? Not less restriction.
Yes, that's right.
Unlike what is happening right now in the UK is that unfortunately in an attempt, I would say in an attempt to outright wing or basically show Nigel Farage and his Reform Party to be more right wing, to be more anti-immigration. The current UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says that UK risks becoming an island of strangers. Remember the Citizens of Nowhere, something similar.
And so, also way back in the 1960, remember this the river Enoch Powell made the remarks on increasing immigrants of non-white background, labeling basically warning the risk of the river of blood flowing through the country.
So Keir Starmer say that UK has risked becoming an island of strangers, and he introduced a lot of tougher immigration policy. We don't want to delve in so much about the immigration policy, but we just thought that we have a problem with the language that was being used because an island of strangers seems very you are stoking the fear of immigrants.
And what do you mean by strangers? Do you define strangers as being
as
those?
As if Keir Starmer knows every single person in United
Kingdom. That's why I never believe in Satu Malaysia. I never believe in Wawasan Dua Pulau. I never believe in whatever Madani. Come on. Me and my neighbors, being Chinese speaking, do not even speak to each other on a regular basis. We probably speak to each other once or twice a year, and many of them I don't even know their names, right? Despite the fact that we all speak the same language, or even my colleagues, other than work, I do not interact with them.
It's strange
and then we are strangers in some sense. But why do you only single out strangers who are not of the same ethnic origin as you are? I think clearly Keir Starmer implies that people who do not speak good English would be
in fact,
a stranger. But do you think everyone speaks perfect English in the UK? There are also a lot of English people who do not understand Scottish accents, who would not be able to make sense of Northern Irish, Scouse, Brummies, and all these different kinds of accents. And are they friends? They are not. I don't think they are close.
One of the policy, if I'm not mistaken, is to raise the standard of the English proficiency test.
No, I'm not saying that you should not learn English. Of course, like if you happen to live in the UK, learning English, like what Hashi Mohamed has done to improve himself, to climb up the social ladder, because English, the proficiency in the English language does go a long way to help you in your career, in your interaction with other people. Yes, I do agree. I'm not dismissing the importance of learning the English language. But my point is, having English proficiency doesn't guarantee greater integration, because there are a lot of white in the UK, English speaking with different accents are also left out of the so-called economic prosperity or economic development in the UK today.
Yeah.
A lot of non-whites, a lot of whites are also left out of social welfare and benefits and all that. When Keir Starmer refuses to actually end the two-child policy, this policy affects everyone. It doesn't affect just the black, the ethnic minority, what the black and
the Pakistani.
Yes, what is that? The black and ethnic minority.
BAME.
BAME. Yes, it also affects a lot of white community. Are they not strangers to you? So that's why I'm saying, like, defining a stranger purely on the basis of race or ethnic origin or country of origin is a very dangerous game.
And this unconscious bias about racial it goes beyond language. Because I want to go back to the Hashi book again. There's another chapter he talked about. So this is the year where he is in Oxford already. So he mastered the language. He speaks like an Eton boy, and he participated in a moot competition. Basically, a moot is basically a lawyer debates among themselves in a legal court setting, right? So basically, it's to train you how to argue your cases.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just
they won. They won.
I think one best way to refute Keir Starmer's statement, the statement of Island of Strangers, is that, do you think Keir Starmer shares a lot in common with a former coal miner from the north, white coal miner in the north, who is now on on social benefits, than people like Nadhim Zahawi, Rishi Sunak?
He would tell you that his father is a carpenter.
Suvala Brahman, right? All these, or Kemi Badenoch, right? They're all non-white, but they enjoy precisely pretty much similar privileges as Keir Starmer as compared to a poor white coal miner on Dole in the north. Right? Yeah.
And just going back to the story, right? So Hashi won the moot competition. So there's one white man who came to congratulate him. You know what's the first thing that he said to him? Is that, I bet you came from a very good school. So basically, what they're trying to say,
he didn't at all. He didn't at all.
This chapter that Hashi, what is this gentleman, this white gentleman is trying to imply is that this Muslim black boy did not win this moot competition out of his own language skill. He probably got training, or he probably get into a new school, or got a good trainer or a debate trainer. But this question would not be posed to any white person who won the competition. And why Hashi say that is because his partner was a white boy, and he never got asked that question, even though they both won the competition. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that you can polish your language, you can speak like David Beckham, you know. And,
David Beckham doesn't have posh accents.
Maybe his wife does.
Neither of them. Neither of them. So I can clearly tell the working class
I'm bad with accent and all this.
Victoria and David Beckham.
Who has a? I know someone. Who's the former MP who lost his seat in Somerset?
In Somerset.
What's that? The MP the former MP that we quite dislike. What's his name?
From Tory?
Yeah, Tory, Somerset. He spoke with that English accent, the sort of...
Oh yeah, I know. Yes. I know who you mean. The guy who actually, lie down on the bench in the House of Commons.
I'll put up the name.
I'm so pleased that he's so insignificant that we can't even recall his name.
Yeah, that's good.
Right? That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, so ignore the previous 15 seconds. So basically, even if Hashi, right, able to imitate all these posh accents and able to speak like someone from Eton and all this, his race and his religion, he's a Muslim, would render him to be somewhat different, So that is the point that Josh was trying to bring up to. It's not about English. It's not about how well you speak the language. The point is that the color of your skin, your religion, so long it doesn't subscribe to majority of the United Kingdom, you will somehow be found out of place. Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yes. Let's forget about him.
Oh no! I think just for the benefits of our audience, Jacob Rees-Mogg is an English politician who is so fond of the good old days, you know.
He
the
has a
time,
posh accent, right?
Yes, the time gone by. He would like, he would put on the hat, the high hat that the English gentleman used to wear, and then he would, he would actually, quote from Shakespeare and all these things just to prove his upper middle class or even aristocratic background and all that. And all thanks to Keir Starmer. Because of Labour was so popular in the last election.
It's thanks to Liz Truss.
Oh, Liz Truss, thanks to Liz Truss.
His government, her government is so terrible.
Yeah, even his constituents decided to ditch him in the last general election. So that was a good thing.
By the way, audience, this guy is insignificant. Don't spend your time Googling him.
You don't even have to Google his name. It's like, it doesn't...
don't waste your time.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth your time. It doesn't bring you any benefits at all.
Google Hashi.
Exactly. Google Hashi Mohamed. Yes. Right. Okay. Lastly, because today is the World Refugee Day, so we would really like to pay tribute to many of our friends from Myanmar, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, Palestine, who are living in Malaysia. Of course, there are many others that we cannot, name each and every one of them, but we'd like to pay tribute to them for really appreciate certain aspects of Malaysian life, and also I know that many of them are actually quite thankful to Malaysians who help out, who actually provided them with some sort of assistance. Of course, what I'm saying is you do not have to share, show your gratitude to us. I do not owe you anything. You do not owe me anything. But I'm very happy that we met each other, and I'm also glad that I was probably instrumental in changes in your life to some extent. But I just like to say that because of your experiences, my life has also become richer, all the better because we have met. And one of the people that we would like to acknowledge is
Mr. Joe,
who is now living happily in Canada. He was just resettled to Canada about a month ago.
A month ago already.
About a month ago, right. So Joe, if you are tuning in to our program, to our episode today, we would like to wish you all the success and also prosperity in Canada, and keep up the good work and continue to help your community, continue to do whatever you can within your capacity to make Canada a better country. Even you do not want to do anything, you just like to live in Canada as a normal person, I'm perfectly fine with that.
So Joe, have fun in Canada, and you still owe me a hi to Mark Carney. So
okay, right.
Before we end, aside from refugee, we also want to give thanks to millions of activists around the world who is helping to advance the cause of rights of refugees. And for someone who, me personally, or maybe even Josh, who believe in open borders, we truly appreciate. Appreciate the hard work you have been doing. And with the rise of far right and things like that, the job will be even harder.
Yes.
And in fact, but you never walk alone.
True.
Use that.
Of course, the fight is tougher, but the blessings will also be double if we work together.
Continue to believe in what you believe. Continue to do what you believe in, and we'll support in our own little way by having this podcast.
And also never ever become a person who looks down on refugees, migrants, asylum seekers and all that. Be a better person than who you are today.
And if people ask about what refugee does for Malaysia, is that they help make Malaysia even more multiracial and even more multicultural. And a lot of politicians tend to say that we enjoy this our strength of our country is being multicultural and being multiracial. But my point is that ain't it be more beneficial if we have more different nationality of refugees that make Malaysia even more multicultural and even more multiracial? So I guess that's the good way to
that's a good way to end. If you truly believe in Malaysia, truly Asia, you should also start to appreciate Myanmar people, Indonesian workers, Bangladeshi workers, because only by embracing them embracing them as a blessing to this country can the tagline, can the slogan Malaysia truly Asian be meaningful and make real sense in life.
Yep. So for the next episode, we'll be going back to local. We'll be doing something related to Sabah. We haven't thought about it, but it will be something about Sabah.
About Sabah, yes.
So stay tuned.
All right,
and
stay
happy
tuned.
World Refugee Day.
Happy World Refugee Days, wherever you are.